I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench. It's a beautiful Friday, a little bit of mist here, but it's beautiful because Zeke Elliott is back from suspension. It lasted only 4 days. At least he's going to play this weekend. We'll see what happens after this weekend. But it's a weekly drama for the Dallas Cowboys. It's unbelievable what this season has turned into with the Zeke suspension just constantly looming over this Cowboys team. It doesn't seem to have affected them on the field, even though they've had a tough start. 4-3. They got a big win last week against the Washington Redskins, but they have a huge matchup this weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs. This matchup is going to be probably the most difficult they've faced since the first 2 weeks of the season. The Kansas City Chiefs offense has been really dynamic. Now, they did have 2 losses there, and coming off of last week's win, we're not real sure where their defense is, but we know that their offense is going to just stack up yards, especially this Cowboys defense. Now, this Cowboys defense has really stepped up. The last couple of wins have been because the defense is considerably improved. Sean Lee being back, Anthony Hitchens being back, and David Irving being back has really helped, especially in the run game. The run game had been just absolutely destroying the Cowboys early in the season, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to try and take advantage. Kareem Hunt has had a spectacular season. I'm not sure who's the better running back on the field right now, Kareem Hunt or Ezekiel Elliott in this matchup. The Cowboys were going to go with Alfred Morris, but obviously with Zeke free, he's going to be the starting running back. Alfred's gotten a lot of touches this week in practice, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him out there, especially since the assumption is, well, after this week, Zeke's going to be suspended again. So Alfred Morris will probably get a lot of touches to prepare for next week. But this weekend is going to be about Zeke. Can the Cowboys get the running game going against the Kansas City Chiefs, who have not been good against the run? They've been okay against the pass. Having Eric Berry out has really hurt them, but they've gotten back quite a few of their pieces in the last couple of weeks, and that's really helped them get back on track. This is a Kansas City Chiefs team that right now we're not exactly sure who they are. After 2 tough weeks, and looking like, that beginning of the season was really just about schedule and about how bad the teams were that they were playing, that maybe they're not as good as we thought they might be, but they got back on track last week. They want to keep that going, obviously, and Andy Reid has been a thorn in the Cowboys' side for a long time, and his relationship with Alex Smith has only gotten better and better as the seasons have gone by. Alex Smith has improved year over year, and he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, especially after seeing Deshaun Watson go down with a torn ACL this week in non-contact in practice. Very sad for him and the Houston Texans, who have struggled with a lot of injuries this year. But he was the best quarterback in the league up until that point, and looks like Alex Smith and Carson Wentz right now are fighting for that other spot. And of course, you got Tom Brady in the background looming large when playoffs come around for the AFC. But in the NFC, this is about Dak. And Dak has got to be able to throw the ball down the field against the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are going to stack the box against Ezekiel Elliott. They're going to force the Cowboys to throw the ball because, look, that's what's worked for every team that's beat the Cowboys so far this year. Stack the box, come after Dak, force him to throw balls into coverage, and make plays. And we're going to see how it turns out this weekend, but a lot of people are predicting that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do much better than the +1 that they have against the Cowboys, in the gambling odds. I think it's going to be a close game, actually. I think, you could see maybe a 27-24 finish to this game with the Chiefs winning, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys win. Maybe there's just a lot of fuel now, and with Zeke back, that could really change the tide in terms of how this game is played if the Cowboys can manage the game on the field, manage the clock with the running game. Next, we're going to be going over NFL around the league. Outside of the Cowboys, there's a lot going on this weekend, a lot better matchups than we had last weekend, and a much more exciting week ahead. Also, we've got NCAA football, NCAA basketball, and a little bit of NBA next.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture Anniversary Sale.
Save today on Stacy's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Sherrill, all on sale today.
It's Stacy's Anniversary Sale. Only happens once a year.
Shop Stacy's today or visit us online at stacyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacy's, you're shopping with family.
The rest of the NFL has really a fairly exciting weekend compared to last weekend. We only looked at really the 325 games, the Cowboys and the Seahawks matchups last weekend as being interesting games. Really, we said, look, don't even watch the noon games. There's really nothing worth watching. We're pretty much proven correct. We looked at last night's Thursday night game. Really nothing to talk about there other than the fact that the Jets pull off a surprising victory, but the Buffalo Bills look terrible, and after several weeks of looking really good, they were ugly last night. They couldn't get anything going. We thought Kelvin Benjamin would be a great weapon for Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor couldn't even get to Kelvin Benjamin the way the Jets defense was coming at him in the pocket, just collapsing that pocket really, really fast. But outside of last night's game, Ravens and Titans, I think, is a really interesting matchup this weekend. The Ravens shut out their opponent last weekend. Really, really ugly game, but that Baltimore defense really turned up. If they play at that level against the Titans, they have a very good chance of winning. Mariota's still coming back from injury. Not sure he's 100% healthy. Even if he's 90% healthy, he's going to be really good in this game. In the last couple of games, he hadn't been able to really get out of the pocket. It hasn't looked like he's been able to move a whole lot, but he's still got a great arm. He's still very accurate, and they've still got some weapons there in Tennessee. That's going to be a great matchup. Both of those teams really around the 500 bubble, and both of them looking for a win to kind of move up into the top of their divisions. Pittsburgh's going to be hard to overcome for Baltimore, but you look at Cincinnati and Cleveland, they're going to get that second spot in that division. It's just a question of whether they can overcome the lead that Pittsburgh has already built up, and Pittsburgh hasn't looked that great this year. So if Baltimore and Joe Flacco can get back on track, there's a possibility they could end up winning that division. Now, the Tennessee Titans, they've got a clear road ahead of them for their division. The Houston Texans now, with all the injuries they've had, I don't see them winning that division. Tom Savage could come in and prove me wrong and be phenomenal, but Deshaun Watson was the best quarterback in the league before he got injured. Now that he's injured, J.J. Watt's out, Marcellus Wiley, the defense and offense for the Texans has been decimated. That gives the Titans a huge hole. They can really, if they win this game, they really prove that they're the best team in that division. And as I predicted at the beginning of the season, I think, as good as their defense has gotten and as Mariota gets more experience, that's going to be a great team going forward. I think they win that division, and this is a good game to get them started in that direction. Also, Falcons and Panthers, another division game. The Falcons have been up and down this year. I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team like they were last season. Obviously, they've lost some really ugly games. But they still got weapons. As long as you got Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, you're going to have a good dynamic offense. Devontae Freeman's still there. Tevin Coleman's still there. So they've still got weapons on the offense. It's the defense that has really been struggling. The offense has not produced when they need to produce, convert in the red zone. A lot of teams are struggling with that still right now in the NFL season. But the Panthers are a team that is also up and down. And I'm not sure what they're going to bring with them this weekend, but it should be a really good matchup. And I think whoever wins this game looks like really the leader in terms of winning that division. Tampa Bay is not good right now. And really, the Falcons and Panthers over the years have been the better teams over the last 2 or 3 years. I think it ends up being the Panthers, but this is a game where Atlanta can prove that they can play with Carolina, and if they win this game, that gives them a really good hand in winning this division later down the road. Also, Redskins and Seahawks, another Redskins game that we're going to have on our top games to watch this weekend. Last weekend it was against the Cowboys. Now they get the Seahawks. The Seahawks, going with Eddie Lacy as their starting running back, they're getting better. They're a team that always seems to start slow and really build up right about this time. I see them winning this game, and this is where they start really making a move, not only for the division because they're still behind the Rams, and I don't expect the Rams to be able to continue this throughout the entire season, but the Seahawks could make a move to win this division now. This is about the time that they do every year, and the Redskins are a team after that loss against the Cowboys really are not showing that they're a dominant team, especially on the defensive end where we thought they might be. Kirk Cousins has not played as well as he has in the last couple of years. That offense is not nearly as dynamic. Deshaun losing their wide receiver has really hurt them, and not having that speed down the field. Deshaun Jackson. I don't know. Jamison Crowder is a good player, but he's nowhere near Deshaun Jackson's capability and skill. They can move the ball on offense, but they haven't proven yet that they're going to do it consistently and that they're going to be able to do that to win games. It really seems like they are going to count on their defense to win games for them, and the offense just needs to be able to control the clock. They haven't been able to do that. They have not had a running back really that's been capable of doing that so far this season. Chris Thompson being the closest thing to a great running back that they have, but that's not really his style of play. So I'm not sure exactly where the Washington Redskins are going. They may still be a year or two away and a couple of pieces away from trying to win the NFC East. It's going to be really difficult. The Philadelphia Eagles have taken such a commanding lead at this point in the season. I don't see the Redskins being able to overcome it. They still have to overcome the Cowboys. Remember, they lost the Cowboys last week. So they'd have to beat the Cowboys and beat the Eagles going forward. I just don't see that happening. Look for Washington maybe next year being a considerably improved team. Also, last but not least, Raiders at Dolphins. That's our Sunday night football matchup. It's Sunday night football. The Raiders have got to win this game, and that's the reason I have this on the list, is not because of the Dolphins, because they are a terrible team right now. Jay Cutler should be back this weekend, and hopefully for the Dolphins he is, even though Dolphins fans will say no, we don't want him. Matt Moore was terrible last weekend. They really need Jay Cutler to come in and at least throw for 200 yards, get a touchdown, not throw any interceptions. I know it's asking for a lot, but I think it's possible with Cutler. And for them to move the ball on offense through the run game. Now, that's been hurt a lot by the loss of J.J. through the trade to Philadelphia. They're not going to be able to replace what he can do on the field, but they've got some young players that there's potential there. They're going to have to figure out a way to move the ball down the field because this Oakland Raiders team is going to torch them. Derek Carr should be almost 100% healthy for this game, and the Raiders are desperate. They've got to win games because the Chiefs and the Broncos are going to distance themselves if the Raiders lose this game. Even though Trevor Siemian has not been good, we're going to see Osweiler this weekend. I expect Osweiler to be considerably better, and if the Denver Broncos get anything from their quarterback, they're going to win games because that defense is so dynamic. Also, just a note, Andrew Luck is done for the season officially. He's on the IR. The Colts have said he is not coming back this year. They expect him to be back fully next year. But there are questions about whether this health issue is going to be long-term and if his career is actually over. Well, when we get back, we're going to talk NBA basketball and college basketball. We've got a college basketball preview because, look, we're a week away from the start of the college basketball season. I know it's come upon us quickly, but we've got to start talking about it now because there are some phenomenal players, especially if you're a Mavericks fan. We've got to start looking at some of those potential draft picks for 2018. Next.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We've got an exciting NBA weekend. Tonight, we started off with the Mavericks playing against the Pelicans. This is a game to watch, not because the Mavericks are good, but because the excitement around Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins kind of finally healthy and playing together. that's just a dynamic duo that you're not going to get to watch in any other game this year from any other team. Both of those guys have been incredible all season, but the New Orleans Pelicans don't have much else going for them. Unfortunately, those two guys are really the entire offense, the entire defense for this team right now, and they're going to have to get help if they expect to get a 8th seed, 7th seed in the Western Conference, because this Western Conference is not getting easier. It's only getting harder year after year. Oklahoma City's gotten better. The Minnesota Timberwolves I expect to be in the playoffs this year. I expect the Utah Jazz to be in the playoffs this year. Portland is playing out of their mind now, which after losing LaMarcus Aldridge, everybody thought, okay, Portland's going to start trading off all their assets. They're going to rebuild. No. They brought in Jerkic, who's been awesome for them from Denver. And then obviously with the backcourt that they have right now with Damian Lillard, that's a team to watch. I didn't put them as one of my exciting teams to watch at the beginning of the season. I don't think they're an exciting team to watch. I just think they're a good team. It's not necessarily a young team, but they seem to just continually win games. I expect them to be fighting for that 8th playoff seed with the New Orleans Pelicans. And this New Orleans Pelicans team is better than the Mavericks right now. They just are. Drew Holiday is an okay point guard. But what are the Mavericks going to do defensively to stop Cousins and to stop Davis? I don't think there's an answer. I don't think the Mavericks have an answer anywhere on their roster right now. I don't know that they'd have an answer next year, even if they were able to bring somebody in. These two players are unguardable for most of the league. They've shown that already this season. They're only 3-5. But they're scoring over 100 points a game, and most of those points are coming from Cousins and from Davis. They're both going to be all-stars this year, and two guys who are 7 foot and can play the way they do. It's going to be tough for the Mavericks to do anything against. They've got to count on their backcourt being playing their best defensive game of the season, which, look, based on what we've seen so far from this backcourt defensively, not very promising. But they've got to do it, and they've got to get points from Dennis Smith Jr. They've got to get points from Wes Matthews. They've got to get points from Harrison Barnes. This is a game where Dirk probably does not score a whole lot. Davis is going to be really difficult for Dirk to move offensively around. I expect Davis to get quite a few block shots in this game around the rim on some of the smaller Dallas Maverick guards and on probably a few Dirk jump shots, which whoever says that, nobody ever says that Dirk is going to get any of his jump shots ever blocked. They've always talked about they're unblockable. This is the one guy who can block Dirk jump shots. DeMarcus Cousins in the paint, it's going to be really hard to stop him. We don't have a guy, Nerlens Noel is nowhere near big enough to stop him. We've really got to work off of double teams and, making the Pelicans shoot from the outside. That's going to be the biggest challenge for the Mavericks in this game is don't let the Pelicans get into the paint. We've been getting killed in the paint by everybody this season. The Pelicans will score points in the paint. That's one thing that they have proven they can do this season. This Mavericks team is off to a 1-8 start. We're going to talk about NCAA basketball next and some of the players that are going to be coming out in the 2018 draft or potentially coming out in the 2018 draft. And there's a reason for that because this Mavericks team looks like they're going to be in that top 10 again. And there's some good players up there. But the way they've started so far, you can see potential. You can see promise. There's hope on the horizon. But it just seems so far away right now, the way this team's playing, especially the backcourt, can't seem to defend anybody. The front court is not much better. Dirk is really struggling this year. It looks like he really is on the back end of his career now. And you start thinking, do we need to move him to the bench and give more time to Maxi Kleber? Give Dwight Powell more time because that's kind of what they brought Dwight Powell in to do, and that's what they're paying him to do. So I see this team really struggling to score points. They've got to learn to play defensively as a unit because there are not a lot of great defensive players right now on that team. Dennis Smith Jr., I think, will develop into a much better defensive point guard in the future, but right now it's a struggle. Other games that we should be looking at, the Celtics and Thunder Friday tonight, that is the game to watch. The Celtics, even without Gordon Hayward, are still a very dynamic team with Kyrie Irving, with Jason Tatum, and they're fun to watch. They're young, they're explosive, and they can score points. Defensively, there's certainly concerns, but they're playing against a team that also has defensive concerns. The Oklahoma City Thunder can score points in bunches. Obviously, 3 of the best scorers in the league there with Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Carmelo Anthony, but they're also a team that is built for the long haul in this season. So they're going to have games where they play against the Celtics or Cavaliers or other top teams in the league, Rockets or Golden State Warriors, and they're not going to be able to beat them because defensively they just can't stop them. But in a game like this, without Gordon Hayward on the Celtics, this game's going to be high scoring. There's not going to be a whole lot of defense played, but it's going to be fun to watch. If there's a game to watch this weekend, that's the game to watch. Another game to watch is going to be the Jazz and the Rockets on Sunday. That's going to be an afternoon game. The Jazz, a totally different style of play from the Rockets. I think the Jazz are going to be a ton of, as I talked about at the beginning of the NBA preview, they're going to be a ton of fun to watch this season. They move the ball extremely well. They can score from any position. Rubio running the point for them is a huge upgrade. Nothing to put down on pass point guards, but the way he can move the ball is so advantageous to the way Utah likes to play. And they can play defense now. Rubio's a good defensive point guard. Rodney Hood's a very good defensive wing. They've got, and Gobert obviously in the center is an unbelievable defensive center. He's probably the best defensive player in the league right now. That's an awesome team to watch if you like good fundamental basketball. The Rockets are the exact opposite. They're a team that flies up and down the court. James Harden runs whatever he wants to run. When Chris Paul comes back, you'll see it maybe calm down a little bit, but with Chris Paul out, that team is the way they played last year. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to run all over the place. They're going to shoot a lot of free throws. And they're fun to watch just because they're all over the place. But they're not nearly the controlled environment that the Jazz are. So these are two very opposite teams. Maybe going in different directions this season. I could see the Rockets slipping down and maybe a Utah moving up. So this is a possible 4-5 matchup. Another possible 4-5 matchup for the playoffs is the Washington Wizards and the Toronto Raptors. Both teams were in the playoffs last year. Both teams, young, exciting teams. The Wizards getting older, but I think for the Wizards, it's experience. They've got a team that's now been together for a couple of years. They're really growing as a unit, and they play extremely well together. And I think a lot of underrated players on that team. Marcin Gortat, Bradley Beal, John Wall, even Otto Porter has been playing well, and I think Otto Porter fits so well with that unit. With Bradley Beal and John Wall, he doesn't have to score. He can do a lot of the other things on the court that he does well as an athletic wing. They're also a very fun team to watch, but they're a much more controlled team than the Raptors are. The Raptors just have a lot of scores. Defensively, there's some weaknesses there, but just watching DeMar DeRozan is a blast. And that's another good matchup to watch this weekend, another possible 4-5 playoff matchup going forward. So great matchups on Sunday afternoon, a couple of matchups tonight to watch. Both of those games tonight are going to be, one of them is going to be fairly late. But also, the Mavericks, they lose this game, they go to 1-9, and you think, okay, well, they'll get somebody easier next, right? No. They go to the Timberwolves, and they'll play the Timberwolves on Saturday night, back-to-back. The Timberwolves are another young team that is looking really good. That trade for Jimmy Butler, I think, is going to be huge for them going forward. I think they're a playoff team this year, which I don't remember the last time I talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves and playoffs in the same sentence together. But this Mavericks team has a really tough road ahead. November is probably the toughest month they have in the entire season. And at 1-7 going into the month, now 1-8, you're talking about another couple of games where you're looking at 1-10 after this weekend. And I don't know where they go from there. And I think we'll probably have to bring in Dwayne Price to give us an idea of where they're going to have to go to find scoring and to find defense. Because as Dwayne Price said, in our interview the other day that you can find on unifyfrisco.com. Right now, they're not a good offensive team and they're not a good defensive team. And if you're not doing that, either of those well in the NBA, nonetheless, any sport, you're not going to win games. And right now, it's proven itself out. When we get back, we're going to be talking about NCAA college basketball and looking at some of the players who might be available to the Mavericks in the draft in 2018. Next.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? Well, now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
About the Mavericks, yeah, they're not a good team right now, and they're going to be looking forward to the 2018 NBA draft. And college basketball is going to have a lot of players that are going to end up in that draft. In fact, one of the players that we're going to be interested in is Marvin Bagley, and he's going to be playing for number one right now in the AP Top 25, Duke. And I'm not convinced that Duke is the best team. Every year that we have Duke, number one in the country, it does not turn out well for them when March Madness rolls around. I think this Duke team is good, but it seems like every year we talk about how young they are, and they're turning into the one-and-done university part 2 outside of Kentucky. Those two teams every year seem to be pulling in 3 or 4 freshmen, and then the next year they're having to pull in another 3 or 4 because those guys are right out the door. Marvin Bagley is going to be no different. He is going to help them win games, but he is not going to stay there longer than 1 year. The reason he was able to get into college basketball this year, they didn't even expect to have him until next year, is because he's ready to be making some money. He's going to get through this year. He'll be in the NBA next year. I expect him to be a top 3, top 4 pick. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the other top 25, at least the top 10. So Duke at number 1. Michigan State at number 2. Now, they bring in a couple of young players and a couple of veterans, and veterans that were expected to come out in last draft and actually decided to stick around because they could see what Michigan State was building, and I think both of them had some skills that they really needed to work on before they were ready for the NBA. But this Michigan State team really probably should be ranked number 1 in the country. They had the best balance of youth and experience. They also have one of the best coaches ever in the history of college basketball. I think they're a great team this year. I would expect to see them in the Final Four, if not playing for the national championship. Third, Arizona. I like Arizona, and they've got good pieces, but it seems year after year we talk about, since probably the mid to late 90s, that they get a lot of good young players, but the organization around them is really not going to match up with what Kentucky does, what Michigan State does, what Duke does, what North Carolina does on an annual basis. I don't see them making to the Final Four. They've got the talent to do it. I just don't know. That system has never really been something I've looked at and said that's a Final Four team. They could certainly surprise me, but as of right now, I would probably have them outside the top 5. I would certainly move up what the AP Top 25 has as Kansas and Kentucky 4 and 5. I think Kansas and Kentucky, year after year, they're always proving they're going to be in, if not the Grade 8, the Final Four. Those are two teams that I would expect to be here in the top 4 of the AP Top 25. It seems like every year, Duke, Michigan State, Kansas, Kentucky right now, the way UNC has struggled. But I expect UNC to be back this year. They've got more talent in. It's hard to say that they're going to go away. The AP Top 25 has them ranked number 9 right now, but I expect after probably about 4 to 5 weeks, we'll see them move up into the top 5. Maybe top 6 would be better. Villanova is who they have ranked number 6 right now in the AP Top 25. Look, they're bringing back a lot of experience, as well as number 7, Wichita State. Those are teams that are bringing back experience. They have great coaches. The Shockers, every year they're going undefeated into the tournament. they're hard to gauge because you don't know what the competition they're playing against is. I expect them to be in the Sweet 16, but it's going to be really hard when they come up against younger, more talented teams like a North Carolina, like a Kentucky, like a Duke. We'll see what happens when they get there, but they're still a great team, and they've got a lot of experience coming back. They've got 4 seniors returning. It's going to help them out a lot. Several of them were expected to go in the draft and decided not to. They've probably got the best backcourt in the country right now, at least on paper. We'll see how it turns out during the season. But the problem is, during the season, we're really not going to know how good Wichita State is. It's going to be once they get to March Madness and they play as a number 3 or a number 4 seed, and they get to let's say a 7 or 8 ranked seed, and we'll really get to see how they play it out from there, because those 7-8s are always a surprise. They're always a team that's much better than typical 4 or 5 seed. I think that's where we'll see how good Wichita State really is. Now, the back end of it, of course, you're going to have Florida is going to be up there. North Carolina is going to be up there. The surprise really this year is USC. I'm not sure if we can expect them to be great this year. They're bringing in some good young players, but no stars. There's not one guy who you can say, this guy's a lottery pick in the NBA draft in 2018. They're a solid team. They're well coached. I think they slip out of the top 25. I think, we'll find that they're going to lose early on in some of these early tournaments, and it'll be pretty quick slide, because right now the Pac-12 is not a great conference in basketball. They're not nearly as good as the ACC. I don't think they're as good as the Big Ten or the Big 12. They may be on par with the SEC right now, but they've slipped certainly in the last 5 or 6 years. I just don't think their schedule is going to be that challenging, and they are going to lose early. And I would expect them to be at least at the back half of the top 25, if not outside the top 25, once tournament time rolls around. Now let's look at some of the players, because that's one of the biggest pieces is, hey, who are the Mavericks going to have a chance of getting in the next draft? And there's quite a few good players in the top 10. Outside the top 10, it becomes a little bit of a crapshoot. In fact, maybe outside the top 6, it becomes a bit of a crapshoot. But in the top 10, there's going to be good players. In the top 6, there's going to be great players, potentially guys that a Mavericks team could help build around with Dennis Smith Jr. going forward. You put, one of these guys like potential number 1 pick Michael Porter Jr., you put him next to Harrison Barnes and Dennis Smith Jr., and wow, I mean, you're talking about what the Minnesota Timberwolves are putting together now. That's the kind of team that the Mavericks could be putting together a couple of years from now with those young players. Michael Porter Jr., he has the skill set of a Tracy McGrady, of a LeBron James. I don't think he looks nearly as, let's say, physically gifted as LeBron did in his first couple of years out of high school. But he's still a freak. He's 6'10". Really, Tracy McGrady is probably the best comparable right now. He's not quite as physically menacing as LeBron, but you can see that he can put on that strength, put on that weight, and become much more like LeBron, but a taller LeBron at 6'10". It's just an incredible athlete to look at. He's going to be playing in Missouri this year. A lot of his family is already playing in Missouri. They're from the Missouri area. He's the favorite to be number 1. Now, there is a sneaky pick for number 1 who is not in college basketball, Luka Doncic, playing in the Baltic region, who right now he is playing at Real Madrid. He's the best player on that team, which actually is saying quite a bit, because they are one of the best teams in Eurobasketball. And he's an incredible player. His physical gifts are not nearly what Michael Porter Jr.'s are, but he's much more well-rounded. His fundamentals are much better. He could go number 1, but outside of him, I don't see any other Euros really probably making it into the top 10. There's a lot of young talent, a lot of freshmen coming in that are going to be top 10 picks in this NBA draft in 2018. Next is Miles Bridges. He's the outside guy of the top 10 as far as age goes, because he's not an incoming freshman, but he's a phenomenal player. He's learned to play well. He's a guy that can go in, play an undersized power forward. Think Draymond Green, that's his kid. So you're not looking at a guy who's going to come out and score 25, 30 points a game, but he does everything so well that if you have him on your team and you have scorers around him, he can play center if you need him. The guy's a very, very talented young player and a great defensive player. I would be surprised if he goes number 2. I think he's probably in the 5 to 6 region. I especially think he'll slip once we see some of these freshmen and come in and play at a really high level. He's going to slip a little bit. He's going to be a great pick probably in the second half of the top 10. Number 3 they have right now is Diallo from Kentucky. He's a really explosive point guard, a little bit on the shorter side, but can score at will. And very similar to De'Aaron Fox, I think he's going to come into the league. He's going to score 17 points a game right off the bat for a bad team. He's not a guy the Mavericks would be looking at, obviously, because of Dennis Smith Jr. But any team that's needing a point guard in this upcoming draft, he's going to probably be the first guy off the board as point guards, because all the point guards got drafted last year. This year, he's about the only one that's going to be in that top 10 realm. The biggest player that'll be in this top 10 is going to be Ayton, the guy from Arizona, the center. He's a freshman. This is one of the guys that they're saying is the reason that they're putting Arizona in the top 4 right away, is they think this guy's a freak. He's going to be, the next Jahlil Okafor, but he's taller. He's a legit 7-footer. He can block shots. He's fundamentally skilled. He knows how to play basketball. I think you see him probably slip as well. I don't think he's going to come into Arizona and light things up right away. Obviously, the Pac-12 is a little bit on the weak side, so he could put up 20 points a game. But once it comes to March Madness, I think this is where Arizona is going to struggle. Is he hasn't seen the quality of talent that he in the Pac-12 is what he's going to see in March Madness. I think a team like Kentucky could really dominate in the paint against Arizona, and that might hurt his draft stock. I expect him to probably be at the 5-6 range as well. Going to number 5, Trier, also from Arizona, guard forward. He was really good. Struggled against Xavier, but seriously, any player who is a great offensive player going against Xavier, for whatever reason, Xavier is always amazing defensively, is able to shut down, especially wing players. He struggled against them, but he averaged 17 points a game, 39% on three-pointers. This Wildcats team is loaded with young talent. Don't know he's going to put up the same kind of numbers, but if he's able to put up 20-plus points a game, this is a guy, as far as talent goes, I could see probably at that number 4, maybe number 5. Again, I keep pushing guys back because I think there's going to be some young talent that's going to show up. Maybe another Euro, but I expect Doncic to go 1 or 2, Porter to be up there. 3 is going to be one of these centers, and then 4 is going to be probably the point guard, Diallo from Kentucky. So there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be right there at that 5-6 region who the Mavericks could get because other teams don't have a need where the Mavericks have a need. I think the Mavericks are going to have a need on the wing. I think, if they can get a small forward that can play alongside Barnes and, be a physical player defensively and shoot the ball well, let's think, Finney Smith, but more talented. That's the kind of player the Mavericks need to bring in. There's going to be players like that available. For example, Bonzi Colson from Notre Dame. He was able to shoot the 3 last year. He was one of the best players in the ACC, 17.8 points and 10 rebounds per game. That's the kind of player you put alongside Harrison Barnes and become a great wing tandem out there. Also, another player that could be there is Kevin Knox, a 6'9", 205-pound wing who can shoot like a shooting guard but has obviously the height of a forward. Got to put weight on. Guy's got to get stronger. I don't know that he'll be a top 6, top 7 player. If the Mavericks are at 9, 10, that's a guy to look for. He can certainly put on strength to become a better player. Let's get to the end of this. 9 and 10. The sophomore forward from Texas A&M, Robert Williams. Scouts love him because he's all over the place. He's just got a lot of energy. This is a guy who, could come in and be a Draymond Green. I don't think the talent is quite there, but his shooting is much better. 44% of three-pointers is he shot over 35% from three-point range. He's a good rebounder. He can block shots. He's not playing a whole lot of minutes, so we don't know what he can do in extended minutes, but I think we'll see it this year. The only issue, he's a little foul-prone, not unlike Draymond Green. So there's concerns there about, can he play a full, let's say 35, 40 minutes in a game? He's got to prove that this year, because otherwise he's going to slip out of the top 10. Landry Shamet, the sophomore forward from Wichita State, that's a guy that could be a sneak into the top 10. That's a guy the Mavericks could look at. He's a great three-point shooter. If you go back and watch some of the video against Kentucky, it's really impressive what he's able to do against a team that was very talented and good at guarding on the wing. Look, there's going to be one of these forwards that can shoot, that can play defense, that the Mavs have to draft if they get in the top 10. They're going to be available. I think center is where you're going to have questions of, can we get the talent that we want? Taco Fall is going to be available probably from Central Florida, but don't know what he can do long term. He's going to probably commit a lot of fouls. Obviously, height is there, and you can't teach height. But I think his skill level's just not. Now, at 16, 17, if the Mavericks really improve their play, he could be available later on. And UCF is expected to get into March Madness this year. They're going to be a very good team. So, look, he could be there. I don't know I would draft him in the top 10. There's not going to be a whole lot of centers. The Texas center could be available. He's also on the slender side. There's not a lot of big, strong guys unless you get into that top 5, top 6. And the Mavericks get the first pick in the draft. Michael Porter Jr., baby. I mean, the guy is going to be an all-star, and he could be an Anthony Davis. He could be one of those guys. I'm not gonna say LeBron, okay? Kevin Durant maybe, but he could be one of those guys that turns around an entire team like the Mavericks, who are in desperate need of a super talented player to come in and make this team relevant again. And they want to do it quickly. That's a guy who could do it extremely quickly. Doncic could be available if they're getting into the top 3, top 4. Not sure he's more of a Gordon Hayward type. Love to have him. He'd be great, but I'm not sure he's the kind of talent, that can really turn this team around quickly like LeBron James could. I don't know that there's a player in this draft that's a Hall of Famer, but there's more than enough guys who are going to make all-star teams that are guys that can, help create a new era at a team that is in desperate need of it, Mavericks being one of those teams right now. So, look, there's a lot to look forward in this college basketball year. As a Dookie, I'm excited to see them number 1, but I'm also not excited because, man, it seems like every year that they rank them number 1, they really fail to live up to it. Obviously, last year going out in the second round, very disappointing for a team that was ranked number 1 at the beginning of the year. But you see what happens when that talent gets to the NBA. Jason Tatum's phenomenal. Kyrie's phenomenal. Those guys play well when they get to the next level. Let's see what Coach K can do with them. I don't think they're the number 1 team in the country right now. They're certainly top 5. But we got to watch out for Kentucky. You got to watch out for North Carolina. And then obviously Wichita State, once March Madness rolls around, they're going to be a fun team to watch. And who doesn't like rooting for a team named the Shockers? Anyway, great college basketball season starting next Friday. Make sure you got the TV tuned up because, this could be a rough NBA season in the DFW area. Well, until next time, this has been Off the Bench.